Bolt fam, take a look at this with me, because this offseason still hasn't delivered that massive explosion yet, but it is screaming one thing already. Los Angeles cannot afford to get these next decisions wrong. There's money to spend, there are rumors picking up steam, and there are real problems that still need to be fixed. And right in the middle of all of it is Justin Herbert. The question is simple. Are the Chargers finally going to build a team that protects their quarterback and unlocks this offense for real? If you ride with the Bolts all the way, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stick with us, because today the read on this team is heavy. Now let's go straight to the part that should scare every Chargers fan right now, because there's no dressing this up. Justin Herbert took way too much punishment last season. And I'm not saying too much in some dramatic social media way. I mean real punishment. He got sacked 54 times. 54! Third most in the entire NFL. That alone should be enough to put offensive protection at the absolute top of the priority list. Now yes, there's context. Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt dealt with injuries, and that matters a lot when you're talking about protecting a quarterback. The Chargers also brought in Tyler Biadasz and Cole Strange as part of this interior rebuild, so it's not like the team just stood there staring at the problem. They didn't. The issue is something else. The issue is that even with changes, the doubt is still huge. And maybe even bigger because this unit is going through a major reshuffling. Look at the pressure here. The interior offensive line has been treated like the Chargers' Achilles heel for 2 straight seasons. This is not some one-week criticism. This is not an empty narrative. This is a wound that keeps reopening every time this team tries to level up. And when you look at 2026 and realize Herbert could have 3 new guys around him in that central protection unit, the question doesn't fade. It gets louder. Because change can save you, but change can also slow down chemistry, create communication breakdowns, and keep your quarterback exposed longer than any fan should be willing to accept. And this is where the conversation gets really serious. Herbert is not just another quarterback trying to survive. He is the piece that defines the ceiling of this franchise. If the Chargers want to move into another tier, they cannot keep treating protection like a side issue. They cannot pretend offensive creativity is going to erase protection mistakes. They cannot keep acting like raw talent fixes everything by itself. No quarterback plays free when he's constantly hearing the storm collapse around him in the pocket. And there's an emotional side to this too. Chargers fans see Herbert's talent and know this guy should already be operating on a different competitive level. So every time he keeps taking big hits, it doesn't just feel like a technical problem. It feels like waste. It feels like a window being mishandled. It feels like unnecessary danger hanging over the most important player in the entire project. Now flip the field, because the defense is calling for a loud answer too. And maybe there isn't a more interesting offseason question for the Chargers right now than this one. Do they have the nerve to make a major move for an impact pass rusher? That is exactly where Jonathan Grenard crashes into the picture. First, let's start with the obvious. The Chargers have cap space. A lot of it. Even after factoring in the draft class, Los Angeles is still in position to absorb a serious contract. So at least in the short term, the money doesn't shut this conversation down. And that changes everything, because suddenly the rumor stops sounding like fantasy and starts sounding like a real possibility. Now put that next to the roster. Khalil Mack is back. Tuli Polo 2 is still an important piece. But honestly, it still feels like something is missing. It still feels like this group needs that third name that makes the whole rotation dangerous. A guy who walks in and changes the tone of the defense. And Greenard fits that mold. When he's healthy, he's not just useful, he's disruptive. He's the kind of player who wrecks the pocket, speeds up a quarterback's clock, and forces offenses to change their plan. But of course, this is not as simple as, he fits, so go do it. Because here come the breaks. The Chargers don't have a ton of draft picks. Greenard would cost real money. And there is a very real question about how far this front office is willing to go when it comes to paying a premium for one player. This regime has been much more calculated than explosive. So this is not just a football question, it's a philosophy question too. And that's what makes the whole thing more fascinating. On the field, the answer looks obvious. A trio of Mack, Tuipulotu, and Greenard would give this defense a completely different edge. More depth, more bite, more ability to close games with real pressure. That wouldn't be some small tweak. That would change the whole temperature of the unit. But do the Chargers see it the same way? Or are they going to choose a more controlled answer, a cheaper answer, a move that fits the pattern they've shown so far? If this front office actually goes after that kind of name, then the read on this offseason changes fast. Because then it stops looking like a team just patching holes and starts looking like a team building real force to compete. And now, here comes the part that might frustrate a lot of Bolt fans the most. Because if the offensive line is a concern, and the pass rush opens up a big debate, the passing game still carries that same feeling too. Something is missing. The Chargers still haven't added the kind of wide receiver who changes the way defenses line up against Justin Herbert. That's the point. This is not about saying the current group is worthless. It's not that. The roster has interesting players. It has youth. It has guys who can still grow and give you more. But there is a huge difference between having a functional group and having one player who puts fear into a defense. And that difference is exactly why A.J. Brown's name keeps hovering over this conversation. Because on paper, the fit jumps off the page. A physical perimeter receiver, a dominant target, a guy who can win through contact and pull extra attention from the defense. That kind of presence changes everything. It changes coverage. It changes play calling. It changes the way the offense breathes. And most importantly, it changes life for the quarterback. So when analysts keep connecting the Chargers to that kind of player, it's not happening out of thin air. The need is sitting there in plain sight. But again, here comes the brake pedal. Not because of the talent, not because the fit doesn't make sense, but because of the people making decisions in Los Angeles. Up to this point, this regime has not acted like a group that wants to pour huge money and major assets into one player. If anything, they felt like the opposite. Controlled, patient, disciplined, and that matters a lot in this conversation. There's also the draft capital issue. The Chargers do not have a mountain of picks to mess around with blockbuster deals, so any move this big would have to be treated like something truly transformational. And maybe that is exactly where the biggest question lives. Does this front office believe a move like that accelerates the team the right way? Or do they still believe the smarter path is growing what they already have and balancing the roster in other areas? Because the truth is simple. The rumor stays alive because the need stays alive. Herbert still looks like he needs that target who walks onto the field and immediately commands respect from the secondary. A guy who opens the game up. A guy who gives this offense a gravitational force it still seems to be missing. And in the middle of all this talk about who might arrive next, there's another story that people are moving past way too quickly. But it says a lot about what the Chargers are actually trying to build. I'm talking about Teair Tart. His extension got done early, before free agency even opened. And that alone deserves attention. Because when a franchise moves fast to keep a player, it is showing conviction. It is saying, this guy fits here. This guy represents something important to what we want to be. And honestly, this kind of move sometimes tells you more about a team's identity than a flashy signing ever could. Tart didn't come back just because he's useful. He came back because he fits, because he produces, because he helps set the tone for a defense that still needs to be physical, intense, and reliable even while going through changes. And there's another point a lot of people outside the building miss. Not every offseason is about chasing stars. Sometimes the foundation of a competitive team starts with keeping the guys who already proved they work inside your program. And the Chargers seem to believe in that pretty strongly. Tart has become a clear example of that logic. A player who may not carry the glamour of bigger headlines, but who helps hold the structure together when the team needs stability. Even the chatter about a possible jersey number change ended up bringing his name back into the spotlight. Maybe it's just a little detail. Maybe it means nothing. Fine. But that's not really the point. The real point is the bigger picture. Tart already showed his value on the field, and he also showed leadership off it. When he talks about helping teammates, sharing knowledge, and lifting the whole group, it reinforces the image of a guy who is not there just to fill a role. He's there to help anchor the environment too. And that matters even more because this Chargers defense is heading into a transition phase. When there's a coaching shift, structural adjustments, and pressure to maintain a competitive standard, continuity stops being a luxury. It becomes a tool. It becomes glue. It becomes internal security. So while part of the fan base is staring only at the next big name that could arrive, it's worth paying attention to the guys already helping keep the foundation standing. Because sometimes the most important move of the offseason doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it shows up by confirming who deserves to stay in the center of the project. At the end of it all, that's what this feels like. The Chargers still haven't made the move that blows up the headlines, but they are surrounded by decisions that could change everything. Protect Herbert. Maybe add more firepower to the pass rush. Decide whether this offense really needs a star on the outside. And at the same time, keep the defensive foundation strong. It's all connected. That's why this offseason still feels so wide open. One right decision here could flip the whole direction of the team. So now I want to hear from Bolt Fam. Which one of these issues has the power to change the Chargers season the most? Drop your take in the comments, hit the like button, and subscribe to the channel. Because if Los Angeles decides to hit the gas, we're going to be right here tracking every second of it.